project. In terms of agenda today, we've got about an hour set aside. Presentation will take about 15 minutes, and then I'll open it up for any questions and comments. In terms of agenda, there's three things that we want to cover off today, which is one, give you a bit of context as to what we're doing and how we're doing it. The approach will kind of lay out those activities that we're undertaking. And then what I'd like to do is then hand it over to yourselves so that we can hear a little bit about your views. The objective of the town hall today is really twofold. One, to share with the public a little bit more around the purpose of the review, but more importantly, number two, which is to get your viewpoints. We also have a community survey that's launched, and we'll share the information at the end. So if you do want to provide a more fulsome feedback in terms of viewpoints, that's available today. So project context, maybe I'll just start with a bit of background around municipal core service reviews and organizational reviews. They're quite common. Blackline's been doing them for the past 5 years. And then beyond that, what we find is every 3 to 5 years, a municipality will go through some type of review of this nature. More recently, just in terms of background, the provincial government had some grant funding available, and that also sparked many kind of service delivery reviews. And whether some are very broad, and they cover all of the areas of the municipality in terms of the services it offers, and some are very specific, and they focus on a particular department. As it relates to the township of Georgian Bay, the last one that was performed was back in 2013 with some recommendations that went forward just in kind of early 2014. For this one, the context is very specific. There's 4 kind of key areas that the review is meant to focus on. And one is to investigate what we call alternative service delivery methods or models. And what does that mean in plain English? It means, are there other ways that we should look at organizing ourselves? Whether that's sharing services with other municipalities, whether that's doing more ourselves, whether that's working maybe differently with and partnerships with third parties, in the private sector. So it's effectively to look at, are there better ways that we should deliver these types of services? Number 2, which is to assess the organizational structure, tightly linked to the first one, obviously, which is, are we set up organizationally efficient and effectively? And as we look at that, that's everything around reporting lines, that's number of staff, that's the type of staff that you have, to really make sure that you're set up not just to deliver services today, but also for the future. Number 3, and whenever we do core services reviews, is to look at the services that a municipality provides and also the level of service. And the level of service might be service standards. And in some cases, there's certain services that have legislated levels of services, those mostly relating to things around snow clearing, around road services, or planning services in terms of response to requests and applications. But what we've seen as a growing trend over the years from Blackline's perspective in working with other municipalities, both smaller and larger, is also in making sure that we're able to set standards so that residents and businesses that require services from the municipality, there's a way to measure and also make sure that we're able to manage expectations. And lastly, and I think overall, this is where everything culminates together, is to identify opportunities to be more efficient or effective. And that can be changing the way that the township delivers some of its services to be more efficient and more potentially quicker, or more effective. And it's the effectiveness of the service. So it's delivered in a better way or better service to residents or businesses. And the opportunities come in different flavors. I can say that more recently, given the impact of COVID, we've been helping municipalities focus on how do we manage services to allow it so that residents can do more potentially online or using the telephone for services. I know there's definitely a demographic that don't feel comfortable doing things online. There's also in some areas where the internet connectivity just isn't up to par. And using the internet to do something online would take forever, whereas over the phone might be a bit quicker. So that's one aspect that we've been looking at. And then definitely internally, making sure that the services that the township provides is set up that it's efficient in terms of delivering on those services, whether it be managing a complaint or a service request around a tree that's fallen over and needs addressing, or if it's just answering some questions. So that's really the context of the engagement itself and the review. So looking at both the services, the service levels, and the organizational structure, and as well as making sure that we get some opportunities for improvements. In terms of our approach, we have 4 phases, and we're pretty methodical around how we deliver these engagements to go through these 4 phases. The first phase is what we call discovery. It's exactly that. We want to set up the engagement, but we want to build context. Each municipality is slightly different. We want to make sure we understand those nuances and differences and what the impact or implication of those differences are. We want to also gather information, and part of that's going to be looking at what the existing structure is, the services that you provide today, how you deliver those services, and so on. Then that moves into what we call the analysis phase, which again is exactly that. We're going to take the information from the first phase, and we're going to start analyzing it. And there's many different data points that we use. So we gather information from data and documentation that the township has. We conduct interviews, both with staff as well as peers. We conduct interviews with the senior management team. We also have issued a community survey, and we're doing this town hall. So we're getting a bunch of different data points, if you will, and different viewpoints from as many stakeholders as possible, so we can kind of pull that together and say, well, what does that mean? Are there some common themes? So that when we come to developing our observations, it's not just looking at one particular, theme or data point. We're not just looking at what staff tell us. We're also looking at what the evidence does show us. As we go through the analysis phase and look at the service, the performance of the services that the township provides, we also look at the financials, the organizational structure, the use of technology. We're analyzing the survey results and stakeholder consultation. We're pulling that all together to formulate observations. As we formulate those observations, then that's when we're able to really put them into themes and play them back to the township staff and senior management to get their viewpoints and make sure that we're heading in the right direction. In the insight phase, this is where we start turning things from not just looking at what the observations that we've identified, but then also what does that mean in terms of opportunities that are available. And from this point, this is where we start looking at the change aspect of it. What potential changes is Blackline recommending to the township, and whether it be around the way that you're structured, the technology that you use, the processes, and so on, how they engage with residents, how they communicate with residents. So it covers all different aspects, and we're looking at opportunities. And typically, from our experience, there can be an index of about 100 different opportunities, more than potentially that the township can actually action in a given year or two. So we really need to prioritize that list. And Blackline typically does a first round prioritization and then gets guidance and insight from senior management team to then prioritize that. That then leads us into the reporting phase, which we're then starting to develop more actionable recommendations. So taking those opportunities and converting to what we call recommendations. Each recommendation is effectively what we call a mini business case or a project charter. So it says, what are we trying to solve? What's some of the analysis around why we need to change or want to change? How should we go about that change in terms of the steps that we need to take? And then what's the benefit? Well, what should we expect on the other side? And whether it's an efficiency around staff time savings, whether it's cost savings, whether it's improving the service itself in terms of the service level or the impact to the resident. So we build those action plans, those recommendations, and then we create an implementation plan. And that plan is developed considering a few aspects, which is one, priority. What do we think that you should action immediately versus maybe later on? dependency. What should come first before something else? And then after that, we layer on capacity, because as a township, there's a few constraints, and they're typically financial constraints and staffing, resource constraints. So that's how we build that implementation plan and then provide that to the township. And typically, our report would then go to council. We present it to council for approval. So that's the context of gone through, what we're doing, how we're doing it. Now I'd like to just give you a bit of structure and open it up for feedback. There's a couple of things that I'd like to, for residents to consider, which is there are some things that you really don't want the township to change. It's doing a good job, and please make sure you don't change this. So it's really important to make sure that we understand some of the things that are being done well, and you say preserve that, make sure that, and protect that, make sure we don't do anything to jeopardize that. There are other things that we're going to say change. I don't like this. I think we should change it. It's the something that maybe you like least about the township in terms of the services, either how it's delivered or the services that it's being provided today. There's also what we call improve, which is it's good, but it could be better. And whether that's customer service, whether that's responsiveness, whatever that looks like. And then lastly, in some cases, you may say, rating the quality. Everything else is fine, but the quality of it we need to improve. And you might not exactly know exactly what that is. We'd say look there because there's something that we think that maybe could be tweaked. So as you kind of open it up for commentary, I want you to kind of think about those different buckets in terms of feedback that you provide, as well as then how it then relates to the services. And if you go to the township website, it's got services that are lined up effectively in 4 buckets around living here, the recreation and cultural services, business and development, and then town hall, which is effectively more of the administrative side of things. So as you kind of think about feedback and providing your views today, think about one, the degree of change and the type of feedback that you have for us, and then how does it relate to some of the services. So at this point, I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna open it up for feedback and commentary.
John, would you like the public to raise their hand if they'd like to provide a comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please.
I see no raised hands.
So if anyone has any comments or feedbacks, please raise your hand, and then we'll allow you to share your viewpoints.
I do see 2 raised hands. I'm not sure how to add them in, but Brian Stewart and Bill Cowdy both have comments to state.
And to bring in Mr. Cowdy, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Cowdy, are you able to speak?
I'm able to speak. Are you able to hear?
Indeed.
Yes, we are, sir.
So, are we ready? I can't tell what's going on. I can just see a presentation screen.
Yes, we are ready. They have comments.
So I guess to start off, one of my initial pieces of feedback, and this is a prime example of it right off the hop here, is this latest move of not only municipal governments, but governments of all levels to this online format of holding public meetings. It presents a challenge to your constituents that don't have access to great internet connections. The technology may be necessary, but more importantly, it takes away from the transparency and accountability that comes with having a public in-person meeting. The challenge with this format is there's some person running this meeting that has ultimate control, and there's no opportunities to challenge the chair. And it's maybe not so concerning in a town hall format like this, but definitely council meetings and planning meetings and things of this nature. And I really struggle to understand why some of these lower tier municipalities haven't recognized the importance of that and moved back to a full in-person format like some of the upper tiers have. At any rate, that's kind of a little digression and just a feather for people's caps, but I think it's something to be acutely aware of. I know where we are, we struggle with internet connection, and at this point, I quite honestly don't even know if anyone can hear what I'm saying. But at any rate, I'll continue on. So I think one of the really important things to note, and I know I'm a huge proponent and supporter of this, is the township of Georgian Bay is a very unique and an awesome place to live and work. And I think that falls squarely into my do not change category. And I don't know how many aspects of the township and how to exactly pinpoint that about it, but it's a feel, it's a vibe, it's the small town office, it's the with due respect, the low number of staff, and that just a feeling you get when you walk into the town hall building, and when you're dealing with staff, it feels like a more personal connection than, let's say, some of the surrounding bigger municipalities, and not a lot bigger. Even say Aurelia or the city of Barrie, it's a much colder, procedural based, less personal experience. So I think if there's anything that the township of Georgian Bay can take to the bank, it's that personal level of service and that small town feeling, and that perhaps greater ability to react and provide feedback to the people in the township or constituents posing questions or with issues, and so on and so forth. So I think that'd be your run to the bank, do not change thing. And like I said, there's a lot of things that feed into it, but I think it's really important, and it's what makes the township unique and such a great place to live and work. Is that everybody's hearing this? Are we good that way?
Yep, can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. So I guess moving on to the change category, I think one of the major struggles I've seen, we've been running a business in the township now 6 years. We've lived and worked in the township our entire lives, have recreational properties, and have been on the bay. So one of the things I think, again, probably hugely a result of COVID, that all levels of government are struggling with right now, but definitely a unique challenge to the township is the imbalance or the competing interests, say, with seasonal residents, non-seasonal residents, land-based residents, water-based residents. I could go on, but there's a plethora of competing interests, and it's hard to satisfy everyone at one time. One of the things that I see as an ongoing repetitive challenge for the township, and I'm not sure exactly how you address this on a whole level, but on a one-by-one level, it certainly seems like something that can be tackled, is that very often as a taxpayer in the township, you run into difficulties with service being provided and the tax revenue being collected by the township of Georgian Bay, but the township of Georgian Bay really having little to no input on what actually happens with those tax dollars, specifically referring to the upper tier municipality services that are provided through the collection of tax revenues at the township level. So police, ambulance, some enforcement services, things like that. So the township's in a position of collecting these tax revenues, and therefore, by extension, having a fiduciary responsibility for those tax revenues, but is in the unfortunate position of not being able to comment or provide feedback or provide input on how those services are actually delivered to the constituents paying the taxes. It seems to affect many, if not most, of the services provided by the upper tier. In my past experience in municipal government, this is a systematic problem between upper tier and lower tier municipalities. I don't know how to change it. I don't know how to make it better, but it's definitely a repetitive problem. I think my other number one thing to change would be staffing resources at the township have become a huge problem, a massive problem. Some areas of the township are so massively understaffed that they're barely functionable, and God bless the staff that are left and still coming to work and making it happen, because they're managing to keep the wheels turning, albeit very slowly in some cases. But it also puts an immense amount of pressure on the staff in those departments, holding the ship together, for lack of a better term. I could go on at length about the different departments that are affected. I think everybody's aware of what they are and how they're affected. But I think the township needs to do better somehow on getting staff replaced when they leave, and retaining and developing good staff. From a taxpayer's perspective, there's money being spent on all kinds of things in this township that could be going to higher wages or the like to retain and attract these better staff. We shouldn't really be having these problems with government positions that are very good jobs. We need to sweeten the pot, if we need to sweeten the pot to attract this talent and keep it in the township, because at the end of the day, the deeper our talent pool is, the better a township and municipal service we're going to be able to run. And my fear is that we're going to just keep piling through good staff because we're burning them out, because they're overworked and maybe not so much undercompensated, but maybe under supported through other people in their departments, or lack of other people in their departments. So hopefully that's something that that can be changed going forward. I can watch most council meetings and think of, out of 5 expenditures, 3 of them that I would easily get rid of to improve staffing levels or raise compensation packages to improve staffing and get that problem back on the straight and narrow. And I think it affects a myriad of departments in the township. Moving on, I don't want to take up too much time here. Things to improve. I mean, I think that's a rolling ball, and it always will be. I think you can always do better, and I think that's something any private or public service should always keep in mind, that there's always constantly ways to improve and refine what you're doing and be more efficient and more efficient, more diligent, more thorough, and ultimately raise your service delivery in the eyes of your customers. I think all businesses probably do and should continue to do that. Again, I think tying this into my last point about staffing levels, from the outside, I see a challenge in, when you want to speak to council, or you want to speak to someone in upper management, council is completely uncompensated in the township of Georgian Bay. Most of these guys have businesses to run, are fully employed. Maybe some are happily fully employed being retired, but maybe it's time to look at council compensation too, so that, because I feel guilty at times trying to pester my counselor to get some help with something, knowing full well that he's out there basically doing the same thing I'm doing every day, trying to run his business and make money to feed his family. And in the meantime, he's got to listen to some jerk like me complain about something the township's doing. That's something. And I think it, again, not only council, but I think it also affects, the ability of some of the senior managers to react and respond to things too. being that they maybe just don't have the support staff to accommodate all the requests, and there's so many requests, and council is arduous in terms of reports in this township. There's lots of reports to get out every month. So if there was any way to improve the ultimate, end service delivery to the taxpayer, that's always wanted and hoped for. How would I rate the quality of service? This is a challenging question. I think on an individual interaction basis, if we're going out of 10, like you're right there, 9s and 10s. I think on the actual reality of how the services are delivered, we're falling below a 5 when you look at the aggregate. Now, that being said, if I have a, say, specific interaction with Jessica on a specific issue, we have a good conversation. And like I said, you're right at the top of the scale. I think the way it all folds together, though, at the end of the day, in terms of services being delivered and actually issues being resolved, that's where we're falling below the mark. I mean, I know personally, or for our business, the issues seem to be piling up, and they might be on the table and people may be aware of them, but there seem to be issues coming on board quicker than there's resolutions to the issues, if that makes any sense. But I think it's a very subjective question, and I think the important takeaway out of my response is there at the individual level and the individual issue rating, the service is awesome. And I think that ties back into my first point about what we do not want to change, and that's that personal connection, that, hey, I can pick up the phone and have a conversation with this person and we'll find a solution to whatever this issue may be. Anyways, I've taken up way more time than I wanted to. I'm not sure how to tap out of this or stop talking or.
That's okay, Brian. I think we can do that on our end. Thank you very much for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bill Cowdy. Hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly. Go ahead if you'd like to share.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you. Yeah, thank you.
So how do I get to speak?
Yep, you're speaking right now. You're on the mic.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No
I had
problem.
earphones on and I think they were impeding the whole thing because I don't have a mic on them.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I'm not a businessman or anything like that. I'm just a summer resident, if you like. And I have a simple question, which may not even be, this may not be the right forum to bring it up in. And if that's the case, you just shut me down. What we have here, I'm on Roberts Island, and we've been here in this location for 47 years. My youngest daughter took her first steps here, and we're emotionally connected to this place and the people around. We formed a small community here, which is always willing to help out anybody. And we love being here. Unfortunately, a business has set itself up 23 feet from the corner of our cottage. And the business is an Airbnb business whereby they're renting out the cottage next to us 24/7. So, and this possibly could be not a problem, but in fact, it's turned into be a real problem. We've had several instances of overcrowding, for one thing, 10 to 15 people in this small cottage. And we have had situations where there weren't obviously not enough sleeping accommodations, and people spent the night in chairs outside, talking all night, sometimes playing music. At 4 a.m, for instance, my wife went out and asked them to please put the fire out and stop talking and turn the music off or whatever. And it was not a pleasant enterprise. The interchange was not pleasant for sure. So my daughter phoned the police. The police said there's nothing they could do, that it was a bylaw issue. So Kim emailed the bylaw officer and got a very nice reply back saying that she would talk to the owners, which is a corporation. And she then said that she had talked to them. But of course, nothing changes. You know, the situation continues. So with respect to change, I think what we need is some zoning changes which do not allow Airbnb operations to bring in unsavory characters. In one case, these people were drug dealers. They were offering cocaine, magic mushrooms, and virtually any kind of drug you want to some of the local people who happened to be passing by. And when my wife asked them to stop what they were doing and go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, the two people started to approach her, and one of the other guys stopped those two, but they didn't change anything. So effectively, they have ruined a wonderful situation that we had here. And I don't see any other way to have this fixed but to stop this business. That's about all I have to say.
Thanks, Mr. Cowdy. That's one of the things I should have opened with is that there are some issues that cannot be addressed through this process, but they are taking notes for all of the issues that are brought up. And this is something that we are looking at now, and we are bringing a report forward about Airbnbs at the next council meeting. So we can definitely send you if you already have been in touch with bylaw, we can have them send you the agenda when it comes out, and you can keep up that way.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great. Anyone else, please raise your hand, and then we'll be able to unmute you so you can provide your feedback and viewpoints.
We have a couple comments in the chat box from Cheryl Fraser as well as Henry. Are you able to read them, John, or do you want me to read them?
Sorry, I'm just pulling it up now.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I've got them. So I'll read them out just so it's recorded then also for the meeting. From Henry. Seems over time the regulations and bylaws have become too complicated and overly restrictive to where it's almost impossible or way too expensive to build anything. Any quote from contractors are astronomical and unsustainable. What do you have to say? What do you say to that? So we are looking at the planning and development process itself, kind of end to end. We know that this has been an area of challenge, I think, not just for potentially Georgian Bay Township, but other townships as well. Over the last 2 years, I think there's been definitely an increase with applications. Everyone's staying home, so they've spent more money either on their primary resident or the secondary residency. So yeah, that is a challenge, and I can appreciate that. So it is something that we're looking into. From Cheryl Elliott Fraser, will you be investigating continued support of business? I'm going to take a leap and paraphrase. So I assume you're talking about economic development. With that, the answer is yes. We do look at each of the departments to see how the services are delivered and how they measure performance. So that is one of the areas that we are looking at to see how effective the services are, but also how they're measuring performance. So that is one area that we will be looking into. Cheryl also had a follow-on comment, which is, will you be looking at regulating floating cottages? Not specifically. I can't say that there is something that we are looking into. And Jessica, I'm not sure if there is anything on the township, if that is something that has come up or is being looked at.
Well, it definitely has come up a lot lately. And this is something staff are going to, council is talking about this at our next meeting. There's no sort of report just yet, but it's more of a federal issue, but we are aware of it and we are figuring out who's sort of responsible for it because it is a new thing, but it is something that we're aware of and we are looking into.
That's it for the chat.
I believe Mr. Stewart would like to speak again.
Hi, Brian. You should be unmiked. I can see you're able to speak, so go ahead.
Sorry, I feel woefully unprepared for this. I wasn't quite sure on the format exactly myself, but is the intent here to raise kind of, maybe not details, but specific issues for you to address, or more to my original statements that were kind of more broad strokes?
Your original statements was exactly what we're looking for. I mean, in some cases there's context, right? And I think Bill gave some examples of very contextual. Here's some scenarios. So those things are absolutely helpful for us to bring it to reality. But yeah, the comments that you provided earlier actually was really helpful in terms of kind of giving us a sense of what you see as things that we should change, things that we should protect, and the quality of service. So yeah.
Perfect, John. I think I'll leave it at that then. If you have any questions or can I apply some context to some comments I made, I'd be more than happy to do that. If you wanted to email me, I know Jessica's got all my contact information. You can feel free to reach out that way. I'm not sure this is probably the forum to go into too many specifics, but I understand that my comments might require a little further context to be able to address them properly. Thank you.
No problem. And just if I may, at this point in time, maybe just for the attendees we've also put a survey together, and it kind of goes through in a bit more detail. So it's going to ask you questions around particular services, particular things that you want to protect, things that you may have happened that you think are problems or issues or concerns that you want to raise. So the survey, it can be fairly quick, or there's also on average takes about 10 minutes when we did it ourselves. But you can add context to it as well. So definitely if you do feel like raising something or don't feel that you want to discuss it here, that's absolutely fine. We've had that in the past when we've done these reviews that just want to maybe keep it a little bit anonymous. That's absolutely fine. So on the website, it's the engagegeorgianbay.ca. We've got the municipal core service. Click on the link and you can go ahead and drop in some more information there as well. Yeah.
So our awesome CAO has already jumped in and connected us via email. So thank you for that, Jessica. And we'll leave it at that. I appreciate the presentation tonight. Thanks for taking the time.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Okay. In terms of feedback, please let us know. Just raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you.
What I'm going to do, John, I'm just going to put your email address in the chat so that anyone who is sort of unsure if maybe this is the right forum for anything they'd like to say, they could just drop you a line separately.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, great. Okay, I was trying to raise my hand, but it wasn't working. So I just have a couple comments. I'm Bill Cowdy's daughter, so I was listening to what he was talking about, and I just wanted to add further to that I feel like Brian Stewart's comments about the fact that the staffing, that maybe more allocation of funds or ability for staff to, especially for bylaw. I mean, I found that, you know, with our situation at the cottage this summer, with the rental place beside us, is that, you know, Karina was our key contact for the bylaw, and she was amazing. But as far as being able to come out and actually do something in times of need, that none of that was available. Whereas I feel, you know, because we were on an island, there was not marine units available at the time, and she did say that we could have, that they were going to be making marine units available to come out to the island. But you know, I think that as more and more of these sort of short-term rental Airbnb type things pop up, that it leaves the neighbors empty-handed as far as accessing bylaw, which was really, in the end, was, we were told, is our only way to deal with this. And so I agree with what Brian was saying, that things to change or improve would definitely be the availability or the access of people who are not road access to have these services in their area. The other comment that I'd like to also add to that was that because of the inexperience of the people who are renting, and the inexperience of the owners, who are not people that have spent time up here, as they are just a corporation, you know, we had some bear problems. And again, just as a person who has not really ever had to access a lot of the township services, you know, my point of contact was Karina. I felt like I was asking her all kinds of information about stuff that she, you know, she was like, oh, you could, you know, do this and contact this person, contact that person. And you know, I think I know when I went to I was looking, what got me started in a lot of finding out about what the township services were was you know, filling out the short-term rental survey that the township had put out before. And one of the things that I ended up sort of comparing, that Lake of Bays had done the same survey prior to that. And one of the questions was, you know, have you contacted your township office? And a lot of the reason why people had not contacted it was because they didn't know what the township could actually do for them. So one of the things that Lake of Bays had put out was just sort of like a cheat sheet of you know, what kind of bylaws do people have access to, like with regards to this specific issue, obviously. But you know, I found that little cheat sheet was a real help for, you know, your average Joe who is trying to figure out how to solve problems and get services and whatnot. So I guess even just for an improvement, not necessarily for just this problem, but for other things, is, you know, like kind of a cheat sheet for it. Because even looking at the bylaws, you know, which I've spent a lot of time doing this summer, which is not something I really wanted to spend time doing, but I was, you know, that they are complicated when you read them. And, you know, having like a quick little cheat sheet for it was really quite helpful when I saw what the Lake of Bays had put out. So, and as I imagine, and I know that specifically for Airbnbs, there will be a further meeting about it. So I don't want to, you know, go on and on about this, but those were just a couple extra things that I would like to have added to my dad's comment that he had earlier.
That's great. Thank you very much. No, it's really helpful. Really appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Were there any more questions from anyone that's here this evening? Or comments? Again, I've put John's email address in the chat, so anyone can send a separate email at a later time. Not too late.
I may not respond right away, but you can send it any time of the day.
Well, if that's anything, or if that's everything, John, did you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
That's it. I mean, I think the one thing, you know, open to feedback and sharing viewpoints. Obviously, the survey is going to be open for a few more weeks, so feel free to do that, or tell your neighbors or anyone else to fill it in. Otherwise, email address there as well. So if you've got some comments or things that you want to share, feel free to drop me an email, and we'll collate all that together and use it as feedback from the survey. Otherwise, I just want to thank everyone for their time.
Thanks everyone for coming out, and make sure that if you have anything else, you can send it to John or even myself. And I can pass it along. And I think most of the township has my email address by now.